Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Today, I'm thrilled to be sharing a full episode from my all-new Conversations with CommerceNext podcast featuring Tapestry, the global house of brands that unites renowned labels such as Coach, Kate Spade, and Stuart Weitzman, attributing its digital transformation success to its culture and its craft. Along with my podcast partner, Veronica Sansev, we were thrilled to sit down with the company's Chief Digital Officer, Noam to talk about how he's been leading Tapestry's digital transformation and innovation, which has yielded 90% plus growth in digital compared to the prior year. After being the Senior Vice President at Gap Inc., Noam now leads Tapestry's digital innovation agenda and ensures the company delivers an inspiring omnichannel experience through all of its digital touchpoints. I launched the Conversations with CommerceNext podcast with my US-based partners to meet the top practitioners and thought leaders in the DTC and e-commerce marketing space and explore both their tradecraft and share the learnings from their career journeys. Let's listen in now as Veronica kicks us off.
Welcome to Conversations with CommerceNext, Noam. You have been leading a really exciting digital transformation at Tapestry, which has yielded some impressive results. I'm so thrilled you could join us today.
Thanks for having me.
I am joined here with the producer and co-host of Conversations with CommerceNext, Michael LeBlanc.
Hi, Noam. Nice to meet you. Where are we finding you today?
I am in Connecticut today. I'm usually in my below ground layer, but I'm in my above ground layer today, which is a big upgrade for me.
Well, thanks for coming out for us.
Well, Noam, you have been immersed in digital retail for the majority of your career. Originally as a consultant, then you went brand side with Gap Inc., and now you're leading digital at Tapestry. Tell the audience about yourself, your background and career, and what you do at Tapestry.
So I'm Noam. I'm a Libra. I have a boy and a girl. My wife and I met in college, although we didn't date in college, but have known each other for a very, very long time, a lot of shared history. We've got 2 dogs and 2 cats. And people love, for whatever reason, my cat's names because my kids named the cat. So we have Bat Cat and Miss Fussy Wiggles. Miss Fussy Wiggles tends to be a crowd favorite. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm in Connecticut. So we live in Connecticut, and I've been in retail a long time. I think I'm a self-described retail nerd and proud of it. And digital is newer-ish, right? And this role of CDO is newer. So I don't know if there's a traditional path to get to this role, but I'm told that mine is fairly untraditional. So I can take the audience quickly through it. But I studied economics in college. I went to Emory University. Through twists and turns, I ended up doing this general management program with a couple $1 billion privately held maintenance, repair, and operations distributor. And, who doesn't dream of working in, MRO supplies and distribution, frankly. But I did this general management program. So you're in the program for like 6 or 12 months. I think mine was, 6 or 7 months. And then they give you your first management rotation. So that was in the warehouse, which was coveted internally in the company. And I enjoyed quite a bit. But very quickly, I was, I think, barely 21 at that point, had a team of 20 or so, what I consider to be adults relative to myself at that point. And they had seen, many, many versions of me over the years. And so very quickly taught me some basic lessons in leadership of people with a lot more experience than I had. So it was a great learning opportunity. But after a couple of years in the much ballyhooed MRO space, then entered retail, where I've been for the past 20 or so years. Hey, it's not even my dog barking. This is a first. But I took that work that I was doing at the first company around DC management. I was doing some initial stuff in kind of warehouse systems, and joined Kurt Salmon, where I worked for about 11 years. So there I was really focused on hardcore supply chain consulting for the majority of my time there. I was doing distribution center design, warehouse management system implementation, supply chain strategy, process improvement type work, really heavily into that. part of the world. And then towards the end of my time there, was starting to work in the more customer-facing systems and in some more retail strategy type work. And it was at the end of that 11-year period, then I went over to Alex Partners, and I was there for about 6 years. And there I pivoted into much more of a focus on digital, first building on kind of the operational background, but very quickly working around digital strategy, digital business transformation, then started to do a bunch of work in digital marketing, which then became marketing. And then for kind of the last chapter of my time at Alex Partners, I started to get really heavy into kind of like, I would call it like interim leadership type gigs. So spent time in interim leadership at Radio Shack, Toys R Us. And then, my last client at Alex Partners was Gap Inc., where it was kind of a mix of everything that I was doing at Alex Partners, and had a really good time working with that group. And they kind of just didn't let me leave, so I stayed and made the jump in-house at that point. So at that point, I was living with my family in Florida. We moved out to the West Coast and spent a couple of years in role with the Gap team. Really proud of the work that we did there, helping to kind of reorient the organization, rebuild the platform, and turn around the commercial performance. So the team was able to grow digital sales by over $1 billion in those couple of years at Gap after not growing at all the previous couple of years. And at that point, I started talking to the folks at Tapestry, and I thought this whole turning around a giant multi-brand was just too easy. So what I needed to do was come to Tapestry and take a roll-up of 3 brands and work with the team to kind of, let's call it rebuild digital. So the thesis there was kind of building a digital startup inside of a Fortune 500 company. And so that's what we've been doing. So at Tapestry, somewhat similar role to what I was doing with Gap Inc., with a family of brands, but my responsibilities fundamentally around helping to lead our teams around digital sales and engagement, as well as the kind of like technologically enabled touch points.
I think that's a very logical career progression. I mean, from management training into consulting, the steps were very logical. So, and definitely an interesting background. It sounds like everything kind of built on each other. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about what you've been doing at Tapestry, because Tapestry has had a period of rapid growth, particularly in digital. According to your recent financial reporting, digital has grown to $1.6 billion in annual sales. And this is a 90% plus growth compared to the prior year. And you just reported that digital sales as a percentage of revenue is nearly 4 times pre-pandemic levels. So talk about how you accomplished this type of acceleration. I can't imagine that was easy.
Yeah, I mean, this digital thing might have some merit in staying power. Yeah, I mean, the numbers sound great. We're very proud of the work we've been doing and the results that we've been able to communicate externally. But it just fundamentally starts with having a vision as a leadership team, right? That we could grow these channels. Yeah, the revenue, like everyone will talk about the sales, but it's really about both engagement and, of course, ultimately driving omni revenue. The early innings were less commercially focused, but really more about just, okay, let's take stock of the landscape. Let's take a customer-centric view, kind of take a clean sheet approach, and just recognize where on an omni basis, where and how we can meet the customer where she's at, and really leaning into that. And then from there, looking at those opportunities, what those touch points were, and how we thought we could play to our strengths and create, a more engaging set of experiences for our customer. Then it's about building and delivering. So for us, about building our digital platform. People will always emphasize the tech side of platforms, but we've been pretty emphatic that our platform is people, process, and technology. All in equal and complementary parts. And that's enabled us to develop and scale our go-to-market activities and our our best practices, and you start to get things going, and you build that flywheel, and the results begin to grow because you're giving the customer what she wants when she wants it.
Noam, you and I have some parallels in our career. I started in business-to-business marketing with cups, actually, disposable paper cup business. Fascinating business, actually, when you get into it. And then
it's all about the nesting. It's all about the nesting of the cups.
And hoop strength. It's hoop strength as well, if you want to get into the details. And then with Levi Strauss, so I launched their first e-commerce, so jeans to the Gap and kind of the apparel. And then with Hudson's Bay, and in Canada, Hudson's Bay had 5 banners at the time. So we were trying to manage that portfolio online as well, like that. And the last kind of parallel is, Hudson's Bay 1670. This was like 20 years, dragging them kicking and screaming into the digital era. Talk about that. So Veronica talked about the success. You're having great success today. When you first swung the door at Tapestry and walked in, what was that like? And how did you approach kind of, okay, listen, we're going to take this business and we're going to move it forward significantly. How did you approach that? And how did you maintain, which is a lot about culture, how did you maintain a cultural to keep the momentum behind the digital transformation you described?
Day one was interesting. It was planned, but as I came in, I had brands and digital IT and kind of like a dotted line structure. And then my straight line structure didn't exist, was undefined, right? Because what had to be done was thinking about, okay, this platform, this people, process, technology, what is the game plan? I've been doing this work for a fair amount of time and came from another multi-brand. But at the end of the day, it was about defining how we wanted to go about it. And, you've got existing organizations and varied strengths across brands, heritage in terms of where they play, where they've invested from a platform perspective. And so, ultimately had to kind of sift through the pieces and parts, working with the other leaders in the organization to define, what that strategy was going to be, right? And to get the ball rolling. Yeah. And, a big piece of it is, how do you think about approaching that? What are the first steps? And then, as you start to build the team, and, the first piece is defining, okay, where are you going to put the pieces and parts? So, what is going to be shared? Because as an entity, just like your HBC example, right? We view ourselves as, a platform for brands. So, what is the stuff that needs to be shared? What is the stuff that's fundamentally distinct, and how do you build the organization around it? Once you get that clarity around, okay, generally, what are going to be the functions and where they reside, then you get into building RACI, then you get into defining KPIs, and those are kind of the basic table stakes of then building and scaling a team, and then you get into how do you build culture? And this is kind of continuous because, of course, the company already exists. So there's a bit of culture that you're inheriting, both broadly within the organization, and then in various brands or functions, there can be quite distinct culture. So you're taking the pieces of that, and you're also trying to define the culture that you want to have. And when you're creating or expanding a function, and you're trying to create differential outcomes, you're trying to do transformation, it's somewhat implicit that you're going to be creating some, distinct elements of culture that you're looking to deliver. So for us, a big piece of it was, talking about from the beginning, customer centricity, data driven. With brands like ours, there's a lot of elements of creativity and emotion, and those are very critical components of how brands like ours go to market. But then how do you underpin data and science and test and learn frameworks to start to create winning strategies that you can demonstrate or helping to move things forward, and then creating a velocity around it.
If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure and hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss another great episode. We'll be right back with our interview with Noam Paransky from Tapestry right after this important message. Bloomreach is the world's #1 e-commerce experience cloud, empowering brands to deliver customer journeys so personalized they feel like magic. It offers a suite of products that drive true personalization and digital commerce growth, including discovery, offering AI-driven search and merchandising, content, offering a headless CMS, and engagement, offering a leading CDP and marketing automation solution. Together, these solutions combine the power of unified customer and product data with the speed and scale of AI optimization, enabling digital commerce experiences that convert on any channel and every journey. Learn more at bloomreach.com. That's bloomreach.com.
But that cultural evolution and transformation is kind of ever present. And then, we're trying to continue to help the organization to think bigger, unconstrained, customer-centric, heavy in customer empathy. And that continues to allow us to create a flywheel where we continue to develop new strategies, new experiences, and with the right frameworks, it allows us to scientifically continue to win in terms of the outcomes that we set, whether it's more traffic or more customers or more conversion, but allowing people to focus on those goals and enabling them to accomplish those activities.
So many questions because I've lived some of these lives. I love when you brought up the racy part. I mean, you walk into an organization with leadership already in place, as you mentioned, careers already established, people working for many years, and I loved how you touched on. Listen, these brands exist because they're strong, iconic brands in and of themselves. If they start to water down, they lose the distinctness in their category of the brands. Is racy, this who's responsible, who's accountable, is that kind of the playbook on a day-to-day basis? Because I'm sure, I got into challenges where, as digital, who owns promotional elements to the customer, because we don't want to do, and you've got wholesale, you've got DTC, and then you've got digital. So there's always, as you say, it's very dynamic and always evolving. Is that framework you've just outlined, is that the key to kind of moving forward? I'm sure there's ongoing discussions in a very, strong brand, strong wills, lots of talented people to harness together in the right direction. As you're saying.
A RACI or some other framework that helps give a general level of understanding of what people's accountabilities are, or how they're expected to engage around activities or functions. Like that's foundational. That's table stakes. That's definitely not the secret sauce, because you can put stuff on paper all day long. It is fundamentally about, with that foundation, how you get cross-functional and for us as well, cross-brand teams working together. It's the spirit and the intent of the Scrum, how those teams are motivated, how empowered they are, that is the secret sauce. Now, you got to have the right strategy and alignment at a leadership level. But it is in doing the work that the organization actually pushes forward. The RACI, has to reflect how you want to get the work done, and you want that to evolve as necessary. But you want the teams continuing to prioritize what and how they are doing things against clear outcomes and objectives that they're empowered to drive. So, I think in any organization I've seen, that's the key. It is easy to say it, right? And the day in, day out it is far harder to have that, kind of ideal day-to-day outcome. But that is the process of transformation, right? So if the teams have the psychological safety to state their opinions, the remit to evolve in a clear strategy and guardrails that they can work within, they can keep pushing the ball forward. But the RACI serves its purpose, especially when you're making larger organizational design decisions, so that it gives people some stakes in the ground. But it's just the beginning of that journey.
That must be like a great thing for the team to be able to have so much empowerment. And also, I loved earlier when you said it was like, help them kind of think beyond their limits, because so much time when you're in companies, they're always like, work within these constraints. And then they wonder like why the growth is limited, where you're just like, let us remove the constraints. And if you didn't have them, what could be possible What could we do? Like really get creative. That has to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very interesting, right? It's teams want and need guardrails to a certain extent, because otherwise things are so expansive and ambiguous that people find it very difficult to understand, like, well, what space should I occupy? What am I here to do? But then, those guardrails can often become barriers. And so, in a complex global multi-brand organization like ours, it is this constant opportunity to eliminate barriers and empower, while giving people and letting them help to design the guardrails that they do occupy, within which they are, reasonably free of constraint. Or if there is a barrier or constraint, that they are able to escalate that, and their problem can become my problem or another leader's to then go solve. Very, very, very difficult to do in practice, right? But I think that is the constant, opportunity that we and other, large organizations have to, continue to evolve. But yeah, it's those barriers that, in legacy companies can often keep them from becoming successful in the digital arena, because it moves, the space moves fast because the customer moves fast. So I think the more adept you are at eliminating the barriers and creating the clarity around the guardrails, that can allow you to have the velocity to gain share in the marketplace.
Now, talking about market share, in your recent earnings, Tapestry CEO Joanne Krivacera said, and I'm quoting her here just for 1 second, "We sharpened our focus on the consumer, leaned into digital and data, and became a more agile organization." And you're talking a lot about that. But, what does it mean in practical terms? How did the organization evolve to kind of meet that need or that result?
Yeah, I think we talked about some of it as super high level, right? But engaging the customer where she's at and directly with her. We historically had kind of more like religiously defined rules of what we did or didn't do, that was based on kind of like our heritage of activities versus really digging in the data and saying, well, where is she? How do we want to engage with her? What's effective? Whether it is something about, how we build experiences and test and learn, right? That's all data driven in terms of, okay, where do we, if we look at a journey or a funnel, where do we see the opportunity? What does our competitive landscape look like? What does our, research with consumers tell us? And then, building experiences and then testing and learning against it. It can be something akin to, how we think about measuring the impact of our marketing investments, moving from, kind of legacy ways of looking at it like last click demand to, developing, a clear view of, for every dollar of marketing that we put in, how much profit does it generate and where? So, leveraging econometric and multi-touch attribution frameworks to help guide those decisions. But wherever we are, touching and wherever we're working this transformation, it is fundamentally about developing a fact base, right? Those guardrails of, where do we want to play and what do we want to accomplish from a goal and objective perspective, and then how are we integrating data into that process? And I think for an organization like ours, it is injecting that science and that data to then couple with that, kind of art piece that our brands and our teams have been so, adept with over the years. So kind of, building a strength to complement a pre-existing strength is, really, I think how it comes into practice. Because at the end of the day, especially when it's around consumer engagement, campaigns, creative feelings that you're trying to create with the consumer, there is kind of, that magical piece. Teams have hypotheses and, kind of a view of, okay, this is how we think we can bring it to life. And then how do we use data to support those decisions and to corroborate that, yes, we're on the right path and this is what we're going to do. And this is the best way to invest in the storyline or traffic the storyline and to help drive the outcomes forward.
It sounds like almost like a democratization of data, just making it more readily available to everyone and getting them in the practice of referencing that as part of their decision making and validation of their assumptions.
Yeah, that's definitely accurate. I think, it goes back to a little bit of the guardrail piece, but it's yes, democratizing data, but also helping the teams to align on how to read and interpret the data, not to the exclusion of creativity around, doing analysis, but just making sure that it's the same sheet of music of, yes, our goals are this is the way to look at the data or the cycle. These are not the ways that we prescribe looking at the data, because sometimes, legacy metrics or legacy ways of doing analysis, I think, can lead people down the wrong path. So I think it's aligning on that. And then, yes, empowering the teams with the data at their fingertips to assess what they're doing, to take action, to advocate for ideas, and to collaborate around the data. And again, mixing that, logic with the magic that our brands and our creative teams are able to bring to the table.
Yeah. And I guess just on kind of borrowing from that point for a second, the business is obviously, we've talked about it. It's been around for a long time. You have storied brand heritage. You've now kind of empowered the team with a lot of data and ways of looking at it. How did you work with marketing to evolve their actual programs? I'm assuming you're doing a lot more marketing in like digital channels compared to maybe like print compared to before, but I'm sure it's much deeper than that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, go to market around your marketing programs, I mean, it can be very expansive. But again, number one, it's, where are we going to play? And with that being kind of customer-led versus, historical activity-led. And so that certainly shifted, one, kind of where we started to play, but also, and we've been public in saying this as well, we've increased our marketing investment significantly. It's about being able to invest in the storytelling of the brands profitably. So, the first piece was just thinking about reshaping. Potentially in the past, the conversation would have been, well, you must choose. It's an or. And a lot of what we talk about is, well, what's the and? So how is this building on top of this, building on top of this, so that the total pie of what we're looking to do is greater and the outcomes that we can drive are greater. But, I think there's still a very important set of messages around the brand and the campaigns and the go-to-market strategies. But then, we've overlaid a pretty robust full funnel planning process that is very data-driven in service to the brand strategies and go-to-market objectives. And then, continuing on the customer-centric theme, a lot of focus as well around life cycle. So, we've been public around, all of these kind of, very fantastic numbers around new customers that we brought into the brand. But that's the first step. Then it's about, how do we make lifelong, fans and participants in our brand as we brought them in for the first time transactionally. And so a lot of focus now continues to go into, okay, how do we lean into that and have that, lifelong engagement and storytelling to complement, the big brand campaigns that, of course, continue to exist. So, we're developing a kind of more matrixed and latticed approach to how we think about the storytelling, the engagement, the strategies, and then the outcomes, and just working on that together as we think about our platform. But ultimately, it's all about the customer and how do we get more engagement? How do we build more brand advocacy, more brand love with her? That's the key.
Well, you've done an amazing job of taking us into the tradecraft and culture and organization of Tapestry. Let's talk about you for a while. One of the things we like to focus on in our podcast is the people and their careers. You've had such an interesting background or career. And is there any part of that journey that you would look back and say, maybe I would have done that differently. Maybe that was a mistake. Any advice that you've got around that you could share with the listeners around, you've had that journey from B2B through to consulting, and then you've kind of found a sweet spot, so to speak, in an organization, helping them move forward. Anything you would have done differently as you look back?
So many things, but at the end of the day, those things that you would learn differently, you could also describe as lessons learned. I mean, I guess if I think about some kind of like thematics of what I think, informed by the many mistakes that I've made and continue to make on a daily basis, a transformation like ours, or just leadership generally, is about people, right? So no one can do the work themselves. So, you got to figure out how to like serve and nourish the teams, and, different teams do have different needs. Our teams here, some of them are quite new, and I think we're still learning like what really motivates them. And that's of course at a macro level. And then, individuals with very different needs. I try to build environments where it's an intense learning, being able to get stuff done environment. And hopefully for the people that I'm recruiting, like that's what they're looking for, because I try to be upfront about it.
That's the intrinsic reward, basically, versus the extrinsic reward is that learning, that deep learning and intense learning experience. Right?
The deep learning, and then being able to do stuff, because a lot of people are in environments where the amount they can do is quite limited. And so my hope with kind of trying to do velocity around activities, that they can do quite a bit, but there is that balance, right, that people are looking for. Like, hey, not this much. I wasn't signing up for this much. I was signing up for more, something in between, right? So, trying to furnish that for them, and then through that being a talent magnet for like those kinds of people, because that's the kind of culture and output that we're trying to create. But being able to tell that story, interview for that and match people up. That's kind of like the secret sauce. So right, so. Yeah. The lesson, learned over time is just like trying to be really clear about that, because for X percent of the population, that's exactly what they're looking for. And for Y percent, it's, by definition, not. I think the other thing that I've seen over the years, I hear that some people and organizations like aren't so great with their partners. For me, the partners are part of the organization. You may not have as much direct influence and control, but then again, I've got a lot of matrixed relationships and teams I have to lead through a fair amount of influence. And the partners are key, because they have huge resources, and many of them are very well funded, and they can move really quickly. And the partners, at least that I tend to gravitate towards, generally have a great playbook. So they know how to succeed in activity or function X.
And they bring a broad landscape outside of your organization, right? Because they're talking to a bunch of people.
They're working with a bunch of other people, so they know what's going on. And so I think, really being a great partner, bending over backwards with partners is key. And then, maybe, the last thing that I've learned or have seen, or that I think has served me well over the years, is this idea of, I guess I would call it like fact-based resilience. Yeah. I think I really learned this quite a bit at Alex Partners, but it's about doing the right analysis so you can set a stretch goal that is rooted in fact and can be achieved, but then you must commit. Like you will get that result no matter what. I've learned more often than not, you can achieve it. Now, I mean, everyone's got to develop their competence in doing that underlying analysis to set that target.
Yeah.
But I've seen, teams able to consistently deliver. They don't always believe it at first,
right? But
they can.
It's a windy path. I'm sure it's a windy path, right? It's not always the linear point A through.
Some comes easy. Yeah. Some of it comes easy, and some of it's really hard. But, I think if you can help teams understand and start to build that confidence that I can't set a goal that I would not have months ago, years ago, believed was possible, but I can, lead this team or that team, someone in your organization believes that they can and will deliver that outcome. More often than not, they can. And I think that's super powerful for teams and organizations. And I think some of the higher performing organizations, like that's core of their DNA. But in a lot of legacy companies, that that kind of thinking is not well enrolled.
Yeah, you got to shake off the rust sometimes, right? It is possible. It can be done, all informed by data. All right, speaking of informed by data, that's looking a little what you do today. Let's cast your mind 5 years. You and I are having a coffee together 5 years from today. Talk about not necessarily your role at Tapestry per se, but what does it look like in 5 years? Is it, someone who's just a wizard of algorithms, or is there still brand and essence and, as you say, a lot about people and process, not just about technology? Imagine 5 years from today, what would we be talking about?
I think everyone's roles are going to evolve, but in terms of this like digital position, I would like to think if those of us who are in this seat currently are successful, the role melts away into something else. It either gets consumed by the other roles, or you've seen some of these CDO positions recently evolving to like chief customer officers. And at the heart of what I'm trying to do is customer centric transformation. Anyway, I mean, I'll kind of take any which title. But I think if the CDO role melts away, that will mean, at least in the context of retail, that would probably indicate that organizations have, more natively embedded digital thinking and activities into their everyday. But I think, the legacy organizations in particular are nowhere near that. So the CDO in the context of how I do it and how others do it, I think will look like that. You also have some CDOs who are kind of like chief analytics type folks, and I think those roles will definitely continue. And then in terms of CMOs, I think you've got this interesting dichotomy in the skill set around the CMO, where they have to help with the kind of like brand strategy and direction, the storytelling, the creative output. That's one side of the brain. And then the other side of the brain, the role is becoming ever more analytically intense.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting to see if that role bifurcates a bit, where perhaps the analytical pieces go more into like the, head of analytics, and then the storytelling goes more into like, chief creative officer type positions. You're also seeing the growth of this like chief brand officer role. So I think there's some evolution there, but I think it is this, very difficult dichotomy to manage of being so strong to be able to lead creative organizations and tell the story of brands, while at the same time essentially being a data scientist. It's a lot to ask of one person.
But I like kind of that vision that you painted, that eventually, digital will fall into the background. All organizations will become kind of, or at least the ones that survive, will become digital by default. And then, it's like managing the customer or managing the brand or managing the data, but not so much like a chief digital officer.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such an interesting conversation. And Noam, every time we connect, you're always asking me if I've got great folks to help continue to scale your organization. So this is a great opportunity.
Always hiring.
So you've talked about what you're looking for, but maybe specifics about roles and where people can learn more about opportunities at Tapestry.
We are hiring for everything, generally at the more mid levels and below, but every once in a while that opportunities open up. But we're looking for folks as we think about digital and as we plan it out. There are areas that kind of I'm more directly managing, like product management and UX and some of the tactical digital marketing stuff. But we also need great to continue to build our roster in terms of great digital creatives. Our supply chain logistics team is building up, because as we grow our sales channels, we have to expand our distribution network and become ever more sophisticated in how we think about inventory and positioning. So in the brand digital teams around site merchandising and optimization, we've got openings pretty much anywhere. So if anyone is interested in being in a brand or central digital organization, or being it's called digital adjacent or a creative contributor, we are looking for you. Certainly folks can do one of two things, like open formal rules are always posted on our Tapestry corporate website, and it's defined whether the role is in corporate or in one of the brands and in the US or internationally. And folks are also very welcome to reach out to me or any of our other leaders. We love engaging and talking to talent and hearing, what's going on, what they're thinking. Whether we've got a role currently open or not, we love getting to know people. So please, don't hesitate to reach out on the talent side. That doesn't mean vendors send me 100 emails, because you already send me 100 emails. I see them, but we're always happy to talk to emerging talent.
And it sounds like a great opportunity, just with a lot of autonomy and being able to kind of drive some real meaningful impact in a big brand. Well, awesome, Noam. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been so great to learn about the digital transformation and your career. I learned a lot from this. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Take care, all.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Conversations with CommerceNext. Please follow us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast platform, where we will be sharing career advice and marketing strategies from e-commerce and digital marketing leaders at retailers and direct-to-consumer brands each and every episode. CommerceNext is a community, event series, and conference for marketers at retail and direct-to-consumer brands. Through our online forums, interviews, webinars, summits, and other in-person events, we harness the collective wisdom of our community to help marketers grow their businesses and advance their careers. Join CommerceNext events to meet other industry leaders and learn the latest e-commerce and marketing strategies. You can find upcoming events at CommerceNext.com. Have a fantastic week, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Voice of Retail. Be sure and follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy podcasts so you don't miss out on the latest episodes, industry news, and insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a rating review, as it really helps us grow so that we continue to get amazing guests onto the show. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of Emmy LeBlanc Company, Inc., and if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at emmyleblanc.co. Until next time, stay safe, have a great week.